everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Sheng, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything from us in the future. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. A newly trimmed Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Morning, this is Lei Xing, your co-host, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode 251. Happy Juneteenth and a safe and peaceful Dragon Boat Festival.
Dragon Boat.
As we say in China. We don't say happy, we say safe and peaceful. It's the only time of the year where we say that. Well, BMW
What's this
Group,
Dragon Boat Festival all about? Like, can we give our audience
it's
a little bit of a history
famous
lesson?
Chinese poet, and we have to do these Dragon Boat races and eat this sticky rice dumplings. It's part of the culture.
For about a year, I was going to Hohai about once a week doing Dragon Boat. It was really fun, but it is tough exercise. It is a tough exercise.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of tough, that's the key word the past week. It's been kind of a slow week, but
stop for
the
a second, Lei.
headlines.
Go USA, 3 p.m. today, man. We're playing, who are we playing?
Socceroos. We're playing the Socceroos,
Yes.
which are the Australia team.
I'm wearing my Team USA shirt. That's why I'm
Down
wearing
under.
that. So
Yeah, definitely tuning in for that one. Speaking of tough, so this over here is having a tough time, BMW Group, and then the two headlines or the news I caught in a relatively slow week. One is BMW Group revising guidance downward because of China. And the other is the retail goods sales in China fell in May. It's been a while that we've seen that kind of number. So it's pretty drastic. I think the situation is probably worse than what many of us expected. So those are probably the two biggest things that we can talk about this episode.
So what's important, I think, Lei, is also that the economy hasn't been doing good for a while. And this not only affects the legacy automakers, the reason it affects them differently is because they've been having shrinking market share for quite some time. And most of the other Chinese players are treading water with only a few gaining in recent months. You've seen NIO gain a little bit at the expense of a Li Auto. You've seen Xiaomi increase a little bit. You've seen the HEMA brands doing fairly well at the top end. And so it's just a broader reflection of the current economic environment in China. And we've seen the subsidies go away a little bit earlier this year. Now, this makes me wonder, the Chinese government is going to look at this and say, we need to boost the economy a little bit and revisit subsidies.
Well, China just announced another, what's the translation? It will be the NEVs to the countryside program. So that has been going on quite a few times in recent years, but that's one of the things that's trying to drive and boost consumption. But here's the line I wanted to read in the press release by BMW Group. And I quote, "The negative development in the Chinese automotive market accelerated further in the second quarter, particularly for non-electric vehicles." So the context I wanted to stress is over the last 25 years that I've covered the Chinese auto market, this is probably the first time that I've seen the foreign automakers pinpoint the reason that they're doing this re-guidance on exactly China. Now, they post these guidance updates often, regularly. But I think this is the first time that I've seen China being at the very top of the reason why they're doing this. So that shows the significance and the drastic situation in the market for the foreign automakers. And I posted that BMW Group is obviously not alone. Every other foreign automaker that are dependent on the non-electric vehicles are facing the same issues. So quite significant.
Let's put a number on this and kind of frame it a little bit better. I had posted in this week's newsletter, Lei, that peak ICE was 2021 in China and topped around 19 million units. That number's fallen by 7 million units or 36%. So this is exactly what BMW is talking about. We're going to get well over 50% NEV take rate in 2026, not only because a little bit of growth in the NEV sales, but also what we're talking about, shrinking of that ICE number. So that's why we get closer to that 80% that Li Bin has talked about, He Xiaopeng has talked about with regards to NEV take rate by 2030 or whatever. So, man, it is disproportionately affecting the legacy automakers, the shrinking of the ICE space.
Structurally, we're entering a period, we're at another inflection point. A few kind of numbers. So you mentioned about the take rate, right? So it's getting close to 2/3 of vehicles sold, passenger vehicles, are NEVs. And the 80% Li Bin talked about could be within reach within the next year in a certain month. So that is probably going faster than all of us expected. At the same time, the fall of the non-electric ICE EVs. At the same time, exports outpacing domestic sales. And the glass half full in me is actually, I believe this is good because Li Bin talked about for the longest time, China has been in this muddy water. He mentioned something about the brands being in this muddy water stage, now moving into a more clarification stage, which means that, the weaker players are in danger. Finally, we talk about consolidation, and this is time to do it.
One thing that's really important to kind of keep an eye on, because Volkswagen during their investor day this week said that they're reducing their manufacturing footprint from 12 million units to 9 million units, which is much more realistic to where their sales are going to be, they feel. But if we look at BYD, they're continuing to add capacity on the battery side and on the EV side. And then we see the EU this week announcing that loophole for PHEVs where there's no tariff. There is a tariff on BEVs, but not PHEVs currently. And that loophole is where BYD, Leapmotor kind of take advantage of exports into the EU region. That's going to be closed, or at least that's the rumor. And they're going to start adding a tariff on PHEV imports as well into the EU. The reason I bring that up is because BYD already has a large base of manufacturing in China. Millions and millions and millions of units. NIO, XPeng, Li Auto, Xiaomi, much smaller footprints. So if the market continues to struggle and then BYD, Chery, Great Wall are all also building capacity outside of China, that puts enormous pressure on BYD to make sure the factories in China, especially if protectionism continues to happen around the world, it's going to put huge pressure on BYD to stay at 75, 80, 85%. And not only on the finished goods vehicle side, but also the battery side. So that's going to be much more challenging for the BYDs and the Cherys and the Great Walls and the SAICs because they're already selling millions of units. Li Bin, he's still at the hundreds of thousands of units, so he doesn't have the type of capacity, although the pressure might feel the same. The absolute number of extra capacity that NIO has is not even close to what BYD or Chery could potentially have.
And BYD wants 75% of sales in Europe produced locally. Stella has been on the record saying that. There was a recent... Yeah, go ahead.
Really quickly, the reason that's important for them is because in order to reach the 11 million unit mark to pass Toyota, they can't all build it in China. So that's why they're doing that. If you listen to Wang Chuanfu and Stella Li, they're almost trying to will this into existence, that they're going to be this number one brand. But you and I believe, or at least I believe, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, how much more challenging it is going to be to go from 4.6 to 10.6.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that last episode, but I was saying that the German Manager magazine came out with a report which talked about Volkswagen Group at the end of last year. Internally, they had this internal gauge of confidence of their board members. And I think of the 8 or 9 board members, they voted that they're pretty much in survival mode. And adding on top of what BMW Group announced publicly,
they're in survival mode, but no manager is jumping on the sword.
Bluma, he's kind of defending himself because of all the achievements that they've achieved. But yeah,
so this week there's an organization called Center. Go ahead.
But I was saying that the flip side is Volkswagen Group is the most aggressive in becoming Chinese and going through China's speed.
Well, so
we applaud them for that.
Yes, but here's a comparative debate that you and I can talk about for a few minutes. Do you believe Neue Klasse in the China market will be successful, or do you believe ID series with XPeng Foundation will be more successful? Now, we're talking 2 different segments, but it's this new brand of vehicle, at least under the body, under the physical structure. I'd love to hear what you think, because I don't know if they can both win.
Well, what benchmark are we talking about when we say successful? Are they consistently delivering 10,000 units per month a model? That's the minimum to say that they're successful. ID Era 9X is not there yet. Cumulatively, I think they're approaching 10,000 units since launch. It's lukewarm, I would say. Not the best performance, but if we're benchmarking on the products being down-to-earth Chinese, then they have the potential to be successful. But majority is still not at this point.
But successful, but not claw back the 1.5 million, almost 2 million units of sales that they've lost over the last 6 or 7 years, correct?
No, because they're still depending a lot on the ICE EVs. And actually, BMW Group just stopped production of their i3 and the iX1 to make way for the Neue Klasse iX3 in China.
I want to be clear about this, Lei. BMW Neue Klasse, it's still fairly expensive in China. Now, it's much more affordable than traditional BMWs 10, 12, 15 years ago, because BMW priced pretty aggressively in the premium space and was able to get away with it. But it's almost like they're playing a different game, because if you look at the iX and you look at the ES8, the feature set is just so radically, it's same but different, because BMW is still trying to price as a premium brand in China. Although that's been capped a little bit, it's still trying to price as a premium brand.
And then the other perspective we can talk about is what type of competition are the Neue Klasse and ID Era 9X, 8X, upcoming 8X are facing. Case in point is the Datang that just launched this week. This Datang not only competes with the large 9 Series, 8 Series SUVs, but on that price point of 200,000, 300,000 RMB, it competes with the Xiaomi U7. It competes with the Tesla Model Y. It has 150,000 units. The Neue Klasse and the ID Era, they never announce orders, intakes. When do they, if they say something, we got 100,000
If they're proud of them, they'll announce it, but they're not very proud of them.
There's a lot of ways to dissect if they're successful or not, but do we benchmark against the success of models like the Datang or?
I watched some of the VW Group Investor Day, and I don't see real change happening. I see cost reduction goals. I see cutting staff, but I don't see management is doing this differently. What management is doing is trying to grab a lifeline from XPeng, trying to grab a lifeline from Rivian, trying to grab a lifeline from Horizon. That's what they're doing. And here's a question, Lei, and I'm sure there's someone we could pull in that could answer this intelligently, but you and I, we talk to people consistently every week. There's 3 chefs in the technology side of VW Group. There's Rivian, there's Cariad, and then there's XPeng. How is that how is that going to shake out? What's Cariad's role? And then Rivian is designing its own silicon. XPeng is already launched and fabbing its own silicon and stuffing it into G6, G7, and P7. So that, to me, looks like it's still pretty complex. And if we're looking for additional speed, if we're looking for simpler processes, that's not happening at VW. And that's just a simple example that I'm making.
And also the fact that we're entering this period of this latest numbers reported by the National Bureau of Statistics of the domestic retail sales goods down. If you include the autos, it's not the best of time. That's another factor. Not only are you facing the competition, cutthroat, bloodbath competition from the domestic players, you're also in this kind of a period of economic pressure, domestic sales pressure.
And the rest of the world doesn't want your exports. Now, a couple of things that I'm thinking about. How long this truce between Iran and the United States will be. The Strait of Hormuz is supposed to be opening up, but that's going to take a little bit while to kind of get back to the homeostasis. And that was actually a good thing for the Chinese automakers because it meant that they could push more NEVs into the export markets. But VW and BMW still sell quite a bit of ICE vehicles. Not only they're trying to in China and they're not that successful, but in Europe, they're still doing that. And then North America, obviously, is still the major market for ICE vehicles. And so with BMW and Mercedes and Volkswagen, Audi in particular, and Porsche under Volkswagen getting tariffed when they ship to the United States, it is just not a favorable global situation for the Germans, if I'm being frank and honest.
No. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, how was your morning, Lei?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. As the Neue Klasse, as you've seen the vehicles yourself, is that a standout winner in the China market at any price? Let alone the price that it's at.
I think relatively, I like the Neue Klasse better, at least compared to the Mercedes GLC or CLA. If I had to rank these, I think in terms of really the Chinese-fication and the Chinese speedification, I'd probably put the new ID Era 9, 8 up there on the top, and then the Neue Klasse and the Mercedes. I would rank it.
I like the new Volkswagens, to be quite frank. Yeah. I liked them when I saw them at the show.
And you remind me of something else to point out, because I talk about me being a glass half full, but the fact that the products are refreshing within every 9 to 12 months is having a negative effect on the end consumers, because now they have this holding my money in my pocket tendency, because I know that the better product is coming in a few months. It's unintended. It's something that was recently talked about. And also China recently talked to a few automakers. They didn't name who, but about this cutthroat competition and fighting each other on marketing. So a lot of things at play. That it's been quite a while since I've seen that domestic retail goods sales fall in a month. the trend was going down in the past year. That's just a reflection of how tough it is.
I thought that was going to happen towards the end of this year, but it's a little bit surprising. But it feels like it's the law of diminishing returns, and we've kind of reached that homeostasis, and that's why the Chinese government is looking at the NEVs for the countryside.
Because villages.
Yes, they're trying to create more demand for NEVs, because if for whatever reason exports begin to taper off, because now we're shipping 1 million exports a month out of China. And it's not just Chinese brands. Let me be clear. Tesla is shipping out of China. Ford is asking for an exemption for the Lincoln Nautilus that's built in China to ship into the United States. Volkswagen or Volvo has gotten an exception from the U.S. government. And so if that flattens out and we see continued softness in the domestic market, wow, tough decisions are going to have to be pulled in by the legacy automakers as well as some of the Chinese automakers. Now, again, when we think about all of the brands, you have to look at sales volume and the capacity that each of these brands has. And that's why NIO, XPeng, Li Auto, Xiaomi, some of these smaller players, I think they can manage a lot better than making drastic decisions like a Chery might have to or a BYD might have to. And I'm saying prolonged. I'm saying 6-7 months. BYD has a lot of tools on its tool belt to kind of manage that. But some of these other companies that build in the millions of units in China could be really, really under a lot of pressure towards the end of this year.
Something to watch in the coming few months, because the summer months are usually a bit slower, and then we get into the fall and then the end of the year push. But yeah, it's quite drastic and dire, it seems. Switching gears, you mentioned about Ford. They started production of LFP with world-class cutting-edge technology. Finally, in Michigan, so something to cheer about, but also knowing that who is behind the technology. So the Chinese have kind of made their way into the U.S.
But we're also starting to see people talk, or media kind of acknowledge that there are different ways to save costs, to still bring batteries effectively into the market affordably, or try to affordably. There's been 1 or 2 articles about the silicone anode. Normally, the anode uses graphite as a mineral, but there are companies, Kirkkelty is really, really, really trying to commercialize the silicon anode. There's still graphite in it, and graphite helps when batteries get hot, they tend to expand. And the graphite helps keep the battery the same size, because at the end of the day, if it gets too hot, the pack would need to leave some room for the battery to expand, which creates all kinds of other issues. So there's more talk and education about particular chemistries, particular form factors, and it starts with LG moving to ESS. Now you see Ford talking about the Marshall, Michigan factory rolling cells now. And they got a huge bump because of it. And that's kind of the share price anyways, which is ironic because everybody was bitching and moaning about that Marshall factory. So, and not only that, but Goshen is suing the local community to claw back some of that investment that they've made, or the penalties or something like that. I need to read up on it to speak accurately. One thing I did want to mention, Lei, is that this week in Detroit, there was the Reindustrialize conference that is all about reshoring, and it's kind of code word for defense, meaning, okay, we are so reliant, our supply chain is so reliant on quote unquote foreign entities of concern, so we should reshore. And I met a lot of people, let's say a third to almost half, they're not having serious conversations. They're not serious people because they have no idea how much effort it's going to take, how much money it's going to take to reshore everything that they're talking about. I believe we, as the U.S. government, we need to be surgical and reshore some things, but some of the people I've spoken with was like, oh man, we were sure everything, like whole hog. And I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then I was also attending one of the organizations that you and I know of is called the Center of Automotive Research, or CAR.
Yep, CAR, yep.
They had their management briefing sessions, or MBS, their big conference every year. And I got an invitation.
Usually it's in August, right? In Traverse.
Yeah, they used to have it in Traverse City, but now it's cost savings.
Too far away.
So it was
City. I was there 1 year, many years ago.
Yeah, it was in Ypsilanti or Ann Arbor this year.
Okay.
And so I went to the conference on Tuesday, and there was an interesting panel, of course, talking about China. There are some half-truths that were continued to be espoused by some of the panelists. And then there's one person who worked at a global restructuring firm. I won't say the company or the person, but, he was the single objective person on the panel. There was another person that was kind of talking about China like 5 years ago. And, his knowledge seemed to be fairly limited. But anyways, and then a couple of days ago, there was a roundtable just for members. And unfortunately, I kind of hijacked one of the roundtables.
Crashed the party.
Well,
yeah,
it's weird. I don't care to be lectured by people who don't know what I know, don't know what you know as fact. And so, but anyways, it's still alarming. It's less alarming, but it's still alarming that people, man, when did the Americans become so whiny? Because they talk about not a level playing field, blah, blah, blah. What do we do now, guys? What are we going to do now? And, the other big thing, and this is what I've been trying to make a big deal about over the last several months, is that even if we can compete with China, the tech companies are coming right on their heels. So we have to be able to compete with what's coming from the West, and then also compete with what's coming from the East. I don't want to lose sight of that. So,
yeah. So the other few headlines on the AVs. So Momenta is preparing for its IPO in the Hong Kong stock market. Mobileye, interestingly, announced entry into operating AVs on its own.
Yep.
And then Wave announced a new deal with Stellantis. And Uber and Nuro are launching in Houston next year.
I need to test out a Nuro Gravity. We need to hit up our friend Nick Twerk to do that. But he said that it's a Nuro thing. It's not really a Lucid thing. So
yeah.
I know a few people on Neuros. Is there anything else that I wanted to talk about? I think the Momenta is a pretty important IPO because they might leapfrog WeRide and Pony from a valuation standpoint, and I'm expecting that they will. So
a few numbers for Momenta. The first vehicle that they launched with was in 2022 with the IM L6 or the LS6. That was one model. Fast forward today, it's more than 70 models and 800,000 units on the market. And I think they have 60% of the third-party supply of ADAS systems in the Chinese market. And Daimler and GM were early investors. 1 in 10 years
Toyota,
ago,
right?
Nearly 10 years ago.
GM should get a decent payout from their investment unless for some reason they already divested it. But I haven't heard that they have because they're using Momenta for their intelligent driving in China.
Momenta is in every one of the top 10 global automakers except Stellantis. I think every other global automakers that produce and sell in China are a customer of Momenta. So
well, and you can bet at least Stellantis' indecision in China is not likely going to affect them. But let me take that back. The Wave partnership, is that global, I wonder? Meaning Europe and North America? I'm assuming that it is because Wave operates in both regions. But Could we see a deep route versus Momenta versus Qcraft versus WeRide type of situation where these guys are courting Stellantis for the China market? Potentially. But yeah, Momenta is kind of come from nowhere. And I guess next time we're in China, we'll have to really test out their system. I'm hoping to borrow a Cadillac and drive it for a couple of days. So we'll see.
Or an Audi or an ID era.
Circling back to the BMW and VW stuff, it's tough times for them. And I see no shortcut to get them back to competitiveness. And the China market is going to threaten to bring the entire house down unless they're able to kind of reconcile and right size their operations in that market, both parties. So anyways, let's go to comments and questions.
A lot of comments, it seems.
Felix, what's going on, buddy? It's good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. Jojo EX6BI asks, is Lexus Shanghai factory too late for the game, Lei? Taiwan了.
Well, Lexus, they grew as a pure imported car brand in the Chinese market in 2025. So it's something cause for celebration. It's not easy to achieve in this day and age. But is it too late? I think all of the foreign legacy automakers, there's no way they can go back to the years of prominence.
Profitability?
I think it might be too late.
Slow and steady.
You can't blame them for trying. I mean, the Neue Klasse, the ID era series, they might be late too. But
steady might not win the race in China. So PF Cutters, what you gentlemen think of Geely making an issue along with some popular blogger in China about BYD's new flash charging blade battery temperature getting too hot while fast charging?
The name of the game over a number of years has been dunking on each other, first of all. He said, she said, Li Auto, right? Li Xiang just recently posted about don't diss the E-revs. And obviously he's saying that because that's their mode. At the same time, they're transitioning to BEVs. But laugh at these things. I don't know if it helps anybody at all for doing this. It's just a common way of competition in the Chinese market, and it doesn't do anybody good.
I look at it, Lei, as if there's any commentary from the central government, that's when I'll start really.
Well, that's what I mentioned before, that the government talked to some of these car makers over these beefs, over these competitive marketing stunts.
No, I'm talking about, if the battery is too hot, like if there's a engineering issue or design flaw, that's when I'll take it much more seriously. 'Cause to your point, it's just competitors poking at each other to me.
We talked about this 2 episodes ago. I think BYD has openly responded saying that it's not an issue. But what we're saying is that anytime
they plan on launching them in Europe, the cars in the charging stations. So
there's the vehicle part and there's the grid part. For the grid part, BYD has these ESS in place in the flash charging stations. But on the vehicles themselves, I put a half question mark on that because imagine that's their mode. That's the
bread and butter
prowess. I'm sure they've solved it, or if they were going to put these flash charging capabilities, that's what they do.
So he has 3-part here, and that it will fall over time as it goes over the 65 degrees Celsius temperature threshold every time it charges. Is it true? I can't answer that question. I haven't really looked into it that closely. And then the last part, Lei, is do you ever still foresee Chinese cars entering the U.S. market in regards to what the U.S. Congress is doing, bringing bills to block them from ever coming in via Mexico and Canada?
Yes.
These Chinese cars are going to come into the United States, for sure. Before 2030, I'm certain. What is happening with Xiaomi? This is SSJJ005. Never mind the monthly numbers. The weekly number has still been weak as of yet. Is this about the demand or the production?
I don't pay attention. I never pay too much attention on the weekly numbers, first of all. Second, it looks like Xiaomi legends enjoy some noodles, like since Jensen Huang's. I'm not too worried about the weekly numbers.
Yeah, I'm not that.
What we talked about is the broader economic domestic sales headwind, retail sales of products.
I think
how that affects everyone.
What people should be focusing on are who is doing good despite the economic situation, because it's going to affect pretty much everyone. PF Cutters again writes, also, they're going to block Chinese companies from manufacturing in the U.S. for now.
It's politics.
I don't, I think one of the ways they enter the U.S. market is by committing to invest some FDI into building local capacity. That's going to be one of the requirements, or at least if I were the leader of the free world, I would require that. Jeffrey, what's going on, buddy? Been a long time. Hope you've been well. What's the vibe on the Trump-Carney conversation? Will Trump ego force his hand to let the China EVs in? Any thoughts on HK entry with the NIO?
Carney is enjoying the World Cup yesterday in the Canada game. Rubio is spotted in a World Cup game in USA last week, but Trump has yet to make it to the World Cup, so I'm not sure they're talking.
But he was at the NBA Finals and at UFC. So
there's no update.
So Jeffrey, I was at the car, and there was a small round table with probably about 25 people. 2 or 3 of them, 4 of them maybe, were Canadian, and 2 of them were government officials. The Consul General Colin, I forget his last name, but real nice guys. They're still trying to maintain a great relationship with the United States, because I think it's important for Canada to do that, because we share a border, number one. Number two, we've had a terrific partnership for quite some time, but make no bones about it, they're moving full steam ahead. And I believe Carney is really, really trying to get a commitment from one of the Chinese EV makers to build locally in Canada, most likely in Ontario, the province of Ontario. Now, how Trump feels about that, I'm sure he's going to be upset if and when a formal announcement is made that Carney was able to get a commitment from one of the OEMs. But you should also look at battery companies, because if Canada begins to build electric vehicles in Canada, there will likely need to be much more locally built capacity for batteries as well. So keep an eye out for that.
And at least in the industry side, we've heard Magna CEO Swamy saying for the record that they would be happy to work with Chinese OEMs as long as it's long-term. So
PFC Cutters, do you gentlemen have any insight if Nissan will be exporting their Dongfeng-built NX6, NX8 EV, and N7 EV globally?
So not at this point, but we do know the strategy that they announced, that there are certain products. Was it the Frontier? Nissan Frontier, built in China, is exported to the South and emerging markets. There's one other model, but not the EVs at this point. We do know there was another, was it the Murano, that was exported back to Japan from the US? These things that do reflect that Nissan is open in terms of where the products are produced and exported. But at this point, no, not on the NX series, because those are China exclusive.
Jeffrey, and finally, why did the Trump administration allow Volvo Geely to pretty much avoid all the restrictions and tariff BS and do business in the USA? When I worked for a Volvo dealer, all the parts I saw were stamped made in China. It was funny, but strange. This was allowed.
We kind of talked about it briefly. It has to do with maybe Volvo being, even though it is parent company is Geely, but they've been in the US for 70 years.
Yes.
Building in the US.
Yeah, and it's important to separate Volvo from Geely here, because that was for Volvo, not Geely.
The state, local, I'm sure there's leverage and lobbying that went on. There's an exemption, but it's not everything. There's only one thing that was approved.
I'm trying to find
we still don't know what's happening with Mercedes-Benz, because that new wording of the law is saying that they could be banned from sales because they're owned by BAIC Group and Geely. So that kind of is stuck. I don't know what's happening next, but
Jeffrey, stay tuned to new episodes and the newsletter because I'm going to try to find out more myself behind the scenes a little bit. Let me see. PF Cutters, again, BYD hinting at entering Formula One. Well, I think they're hinting at sponsoring Formula One, maybe not being a team yet.
Well, it looks like I just heard that the other teams are not happy that BYD is coming or something like that. But the talks are definitely going on, that's for sure. But in what capacity BYD moves into F1, we'll have to wait to hear the official word when it happens.
Felix, always a pleasure as well. Let me ask you, man, who are you rooting for, USA or the Aussies?
Who else?
Jeffrey, this fast charging will hit a roadblock once the government understands its risk and power consumption. Battery swapping makes so much more sense. And look at CATL completely shifting its thesis.
Look, I've always said there's a market for both the flash chargers and battery swapping. It's not one over the other. As large of a market as China is.
My feelings are hurt, Jeffrey. I got some cool stuff behind me. He wrote, I'm going to take that awesome poster behind you, Clay.
I'll take it. If you want it, I'll give it to you.
PF Cutters, what's the probability of the Rivian R2 making its way to the China market? Not for a while. My moles tell me that Rivian's not going to be entering China for quite some time.
Well, they have to get the American market right first. And the jury is still out. I mean, a lot of people saying that they're the next Model Y killer.
And then aggressively moving into Europe as the R2 ramps. Jeffrey, all those Mexico suppliers will be shipping lots of parts to their friends in Canada. Well, so negotiations again, or review of the USMCA starts in a few weeks, I think. And so, yeah, we'll find out whether or not the USMCA gets blown up. My Canadian friends seem to think that the USMCA is going to stay in place, but I know the Trump administration would prefer to have bilateral agreements with each of the countries, Mexico and Canada. So here, I'll show you what Felix wrote. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Love the participation. Join us again next week.
Yes.
Because it's not the 4th yet. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all very, very soon.
Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Li, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.